Next tonight, has the Mayor come up with a plan that allows Londoners to buy London homes? He hopes so. Sadiq Khan says people who live and work in the capital should be given first dibs on all new homes before investors, often from abroad, get the chance to buy them. But there's a catch. It only applies to properties worth less than £350,000. So how many of those can house hunters really find? Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
We'll give Londoners first dibs on the new homes that are built. First dibs for Londoners.
First dibs will go to Londoners.
It was one of the Mayor's headline election promises, and today City Hall announced what it called a landmark step. New homes in London are to be offered exclusively to British buyers with no overseas marketing allowed for 3 months. And in the first month, Londoners will get a head start, but only on properties worth £350,000 or less.
It won't cover all new build homes, clearly, because some are worth a lot more than $350,000, but this will focus at the relatively more affordable end of the market.
Where are these £350,000 new builds?
Well, we want to make sure there's as many more affordable properties as possible, but what we're clear on is that it should focus on the more affordable end of new build homes, and this is just one part of what the Mayor's doing.
This housing scheme in Poplar is a typical inner-city development. Smart new apartments close to a DLR station. For buyers on a budget, it's helpfully in Zone 2. But even the cheapest one-bed flat here has an asking price of almost £400,000, well above the $350k cut-off.
There are some homes for less than that money, but mostly in places that people are not particularly interested in. So I think it's for most Londoners, this really isn't going to feature for them.
City Hall describes the new restriction on overseas sales as an offer from the housing industry, with good reason. The Mayor has no power to enforce the scheme. The agreement between the developers and City Hall is voluntary. Sadiq Khan's opponents say it amounts to smoke and mirrors. But Paul Hackett, who speaks for London's housing associations, was enthusiastic.
I think this initiative will make a really big difference to people earning around £90,000 to £100,000 a year that want to buy a home for £350,000 or less. It's a great opportunity to get a head start on overseas buyers.
The Mayor is hoping to introduce his first dibs policy in the summer.
It's a great promise, a great headline. Will it actually work? Is it more than that?
Well, research by City Hall suggests that half of all homes sold to foreign buyers go for under £500,000. So this is an attempt to stop Londoners being squeezed out at the bottom end of the market. The theory being that if foreign investors have to hold back, Londoners, or at least British buyers, can get in first. Now, City Hall also claims that 30% of all new homes built in 2016 went for under £350,000. That's a third of all new builds. I have to say, if you look at property websites today, most houses with that sort of price tag, new builds with that sort of price tag, are in the outer suburbs, places like Harrow, Leighton and Eltham. And whether those areas will be as attractive to foreign investors isn't quite so clear.
All right, Simon Harris, thank you very much. Thank you. 36 years after an IRA bomb killed 4 soldiers in Hyde Park, the families of those who died have been granted legal aid so they can sue one of the alleged bombers. A criminal prosecution against John Downey had to be dropped in 2014 because he had been given an official letter of immunity. But legal aid means families can now launch a civil case, as our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
The grotesque sight of 7 slaughtered horses is the defining image of the IRA's attack in Hyde Park. But the car bomb on a summer morning in 1982 also killed 4 cavalrymen. No one was ever convicted of their murders. But 36 years on, the award of legal aid to their families is offering one last hope of justice. The 4 soldiers who died were Lance Corporal Geoffrey Young, Lieutenant Anthony Daly, Staff Corporal Roy Bright and Trooper Simon Tipper.
I lost probably my best friend, my brother. Nobody deserves to be took away from you in circumstances like that, where somebody can be lying in wait and set off a car bomb. It's cowardly.
John Downey, a convicted IRA member, was charged with the soldier's murder in 2014, but the case against him collapsed when his lawyers produced a letter from the government saying he was no longer wanted. The next step for the families is a civil trial here at the High Court. In effect, they're suing Downey. In legal terms, they can't find him guilty, but they're hoping to establish his liability. It's also likely to be their final throw of the dice.
It's not about compensation for the families, it's about vindication, it's about having their day in court and having a judicial finding of fact as to who and what was responsible for the death of their loved ones.
In the IRA's long campaign, London was a regular target. In 1996, a bomb exploded in Docklands, killing 2 people. Security guard Jonathan Ganesh was buried under the rubble. He's now a campaigner and accuses successive governments of abandoning the IRA's victims.
Murder's a heinous crime. We all recognise the need for peace and reconciliation, of course we do, but it's not peace at any price.
If the Hyde Park families win their case and are awarded damages, they've promised to donate the money to a veterans' charity. Simon Harris, ITV News.
The row over the multi-billion-pound plan to rebuild housing estates and council buildings in Haringey has already forced the council leader to resign and exposed allegations of bullying and sexism in the Labour Party. Tonight, the council will debate whether to halt the scheme altogether. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is at a protest in Wood Green this evening. Simon.
Nina, the Haringey development vehicle has divided opinion in this North London borough and, as you say, it has also caused a bitter rift in the ruling Labour group on Haringey Council. These protesters are all opposed to the regeneration and in a few minutes they'll march from Turnpike Lane to Haringey Civic Centre in Wood Green, where councillors have been called tonight, summoned to an extraordinary general meeting. Councillor Barbara Blake has Labour in her blood. She remembers canvassing in elections as a child, but her council career is about to end because of her support for Haringey's controversial estate regeneration scheme. She says she's been driven out by Momentum, the grassroots organisation which backs Jeremy Corbyn.
It's been unpleasant. I've been involved with the Labour Party all of my life. I've been a councillor since 2014, which I have loved. I have worked hard.
Haringey's leaders want to go into partnership with the private developer Lend Lease as a way of bankrolling a £2 billion programme to build new homes. But the Haringey Development Vehicle, or HDV as it's known, is opposed by some residents who fear being priced out of their homes.
What we want in Haringey is proper social housing, not housing that people aren't going to be able to afford.
The HDV has led to protests, with some on the left branding it social cleansing. 2 weeks ago, the council was ordered by Labour's ruling National Executive to rethink the scheme. It all became too much for council leader Claire Koba, who announced she was standing down after accusing her opponents of sexism and bullying. Tonight's extraordinary general meeting of the council has been called by the opposition Lib Dems, led by Councillor Gail Engert. Do you feel sorry for the Labour councillors who've been the victims of internal fighting within their own party and have had some pretty torrid times?
That's Labour business, really. I think I absolutely hate any kind of bullying or anti-Semitism. I would never condone that, but I think it's time Labour got their ranks together. They're completely divided, they're fighting amongst themselves and not looking after the borough in the way they should.
Tonight, none of Haringey's council leaders was prepared to talk to us. When Claire Koba announced she was standing down, she effectively handed a final decision on the regeneration scheme to her successor, who will be elected in May. The Liberal Democrats are hoping to get this entire scheme killed off at tonight's meeting, but there are only 8 of them compared to 49 Labour councillors. And even those Labour councillors who oppose the scheme may be reluctant to defy the party whip. It's thought they're more likely to be pinning their hopes on a left-wing takeover of the council after May's elections, and therefore a complete change in policy on social housing. Nina.
All right, Simon, thank you very much. Thank you.
Next tonight, an attempt by the Liberal Democrats to kill off the controversial housing redevelopment plan. The Haringey Development Vehicle has been defeated. Haringey Council held an extraordinary meeting tonight to discuss the scheme, which has triggered angry protests. Our political correspondent Simon Harris was there.
Haringey Council's controversial estate regeneration scheme has divided opinion in this North London borough and caused a poisonous split in the ruling Labour group. The council leader, Claire Koba, is standing down after accusing left-wingers in her own party of sexism and bullying. She's passed a final decision on the so-called Haringey Development Vehicle to her successor, who will be elected in May. but she still mounted a passionate defence of the scheme at tonight's extraordinary general meeting.
I still believe, I believe as firmly today, and it may not be a popular belief, but I believe it, that the HGV is the best solution available to us, because politics means engaging in the world as it is rather than the world as we may want it to be.
The meeting also heard from a resident from Northumberland Park, the first estate due to be demolished.
We recognise there are problems in the area, but this plan is not the answer. This is more than about the demolition of our homes, it's about the demolition of our lives.
The opposition Liberal Democrats who called tonight's meeting were hoping Labour rebels would help finally kill off the scheme. But in an uncharacteristic display of Labour unity in Haringey, even left-wingers voted with their leaders. The housing scheme remains alive, just but on hold, pending the outcome of May's elections.
Now, for the second time in 24 hours, an attempt to kill off Haringey's £2 billion regeneration scheme has failed. A legal challenge, which argued it was unlawful, was thrown out of the High Court this morning. That followed councillors rejecting a motion to halt it, despite a series of high-profile protests. Well, that has pleased the council's leader, who last week resigned because of the bullying and sexism the row has exposed. Our political correspondent Simon Harris spoke to her.
It's the question no one can answer for certain. Is Haringey's controversial estate regeneration scheme dead or alive? These were the scenes at Haringey Council last night when opposition Lib Dems tried and failed to enlist the support of Labour left-wingers to stop the project. Then today at the High Court, a legal challenge by residents also collapsed when a judge refused to allow a judicial review. The £2 billion scheme, known as the Haringey Development Vehicle, has caused a toxic rift in the council's ruling Labour group, which last week claimed the scalp of the leader, Claire Koba. She's standing down in May after accusing left-wing opponents of bullying and sexism.
Actually, it's very difficult to act in a democratically accountable way when the environment in which you're trying to do that is not respectful, is not tolerant, and is really quite vile and toxic at times.
What were the worst aspects of it?
Well, I've talked about a number of examples of people singing a song about stalking in the public gallery, lots of online abuse, hissing, booing, shouting in meetings, you know, a whole host of things.
Councillor Koba says the final straw was when Labour's National Executive Committee stepped into the row and ordered her to rethink her housing proposal.
It undermined the Labour group here in Haringey, and it took on something that was a sound democratic decision in a way that was legally dubious. It was well beyond the reach of the National Executive Committee.
What are you going to do now?
Find a job.
Do you still have political ambitions?
No, not at the current time.
You don't want to be an MP?
No, absolutely not. Never.
Mayor of London one day?
No, I just want to go and, do something entirely different.
The fate of the housing development vehicle now lies with Councillor Koba's successor, who will be chosen after the London-wide borough elections in May. Realistically, do you think the HDV will survive the change of leadership?
I'd hope it would. So I said last week that new councillors have to approach this decision with an open mind. It is their decision now, but the court has given the HDV a clean bill of health.
Claire Koba believes she and fellow moderates have been the target of a left-wing purge, which has resulted in 22 Haringey Labour councillors being deselected or standing down. Simon Harris, ITV News, Haringey.
The father of one of the members of an Islamic State execution squad spoke today of their fears after he was captured by American-backed forces. El-Shafi El-Sheikh was caught in Syria last month alongside Alexander Coty. They were two of the 4 Londoners nicknamed the Beatles, who are thought to have murdered and tortured nearly 30 hostages. More from our correspondent Simon Harris.
British and American security services have been waiting for this moment. They've long wanted to get their hands on Alexander Coty and El-Shafi El-Sheikh. The 2 Londoners were said not only to be Islamic State fighters, but members of a notorious gang linked to the murder and torture of hostages. Now they face lengthy interrogation about their activities in Syria.
What is almost certainly the case is that they'll have had a lot of interaction with the Central Propaganda Unit, which is a very, very secretive organisation within the group, which we know very, very little about.
Coty and El Sheikh were said to be among 4 executioners nicknamed the Beatles by their prisoners because of their British accents. The most infamous was another Londoner, Mohammed Emwazi, known as Jihadi John. He was killed in 2015 by a missile fired from a drone. Friday prayers in West London. This is the Al Manor Mosque in Ladbroke Grove, where all 4 men were said to have worshipped. At one stage, Coty was ordered to leave after trying to set up his own prayer group.
Worshipping is open to anyone. Anyone can just walk in for 5 to 10 minutes, worship and go. But holding meetings or activities or organizing anything, it's not allowed here. We don't let that happen.
Coty and El Sheikh are reported to have been captured by Kurdish militia fighters on the Iraq-Syria border. One of their former prisoners welcomed the news.
Well, it's a satisfaction to know that these people are not free anymore. So they will have to pay for what they have done.
Shafi El Sheikh isn't the only member of his family to join Islamic State. In this photograph, he's on the right, his mother is in the middle, and his younger brother Mahmoud is on the left. Mahmoud was 17 when he was killed fighting in Iraq. Today, outside the family home in West London, their parents were clearly shaken by the latest development.
This is a mum who lost 2. Her son now is in the hands of people we don't know what is going.
How do you feel about that?
No, she's not going to tell you anything about his feeling. Please don't press, because this is not right.
The fate of the 2 Londoners now is unclear, but it's thought their next stop could be Guantanamo Bay, the American detention centre in Cuba. Meanwhile, the Home Office has refused to confirm or deny reports that the 2 men have been stripped of their British citizenship. Simon Harris, ITV News.